Today is January the 29th, 2020. 2020. And my name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University, and along with me is Larry Caldwell, retired NRCS engineer. And we are in Stillwater to interview Dr. Joe Taron.
Yes.
And this is part of our Oklahoma's Conservation Heritage Oral History Project, which is a collaboration between the Oklahoma Conservation Historical Society, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at OSU. So thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Let's begin with, we should say Dr. Taron is considered one of the most knowledgeable people in the Tri-County area regarding water issues, and was instrumental in the West Watkins Reservoir project, the North Deer Creek Watershed Program.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Very good.
That's a lot.
That's right.
Did I miss anything?
Nope, you got it just exactly right.
All right, let's begin with learning when and where you were born.
I was born in Shawnee, Oklahoma on December the 3rd in 1931.
Okay. And
I have been a resident of Shawnee, Oklahoma all my life, except when I was in the military during the Korean War and away to college.
Okay.
But that's been my home all my life, for 88 years.
Well, tell us a little bit about your parents.
My dad came here from France. He was a 16-year-old, and he came here from France in 1916. Truth is, I don't know how he got in this country. I think he came through Canada, but there's no record of his coming here. So you might say he was an illegal alien. And my mother was a native of Iowa City, Iowa. And they met in Shawnee when my dad came here, and they met in the cotton field. They were picking cotton up by Wellston, Oklahoma, and they met in the cotton field. And the rest is history. I have 6 brothers and 6 sisters. There were 13 of us. And my dad was basically a carpenter, but out of need, he went to work in a dry cleaning plant. And as time went on, he actually bought the dry cleaning plant. And my mother was a tailor. She tailored clothing in that and actually made suits. And then when World War II was over, my older brother came back from World War II, and he took over the cleaning, and my dad went back to building houses.
What was the name of the cleaning company?
National Cleaners.
In Shawnee?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So in those 13 children, where were you in the lineup?
I'm number 8.
Number 8.
I mean, I'm number 6. There's 8 below me.
So you're almost in the middle.
Yeah.
And where did you go to school? Your elementary school?
I went to St. Benedict's Catholic School for 12 years, and then I went to Oklahoma State University, and then went into the military, and then came back to Oklahoma State University. And there's so much adversity involved in this. I don't know how much to tell you, but I always wanted to be a farmer. And when I was in the military, I realized I had a degree in agriculture, but I realized if I didn't have any money, any land, or any equipment, it's really difficult to be a farmer. Mm-hmm. So my nutrition professor, when I was in undergraduate school here, was now the nutrition professor in vet school. So I actually wrote and got accepted into veterinary medicine. And as things evolved, vet school started on the 3rd of September, and I didn't get out of the military till the 13th of September. So I wrote back, and they said, we'll hold a place for you. And so I got separated at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, was driving home, and my car broke down in St. Louis, Missouri, and I forgot to call and tell them. So when I got here, they said, you didn't show up, so we gave your place to someone else. But you know, I hope I don't bore you by saying this, but God has guided my life all my life. I believe that, and I ask him to. Now, if that's not admissible,
Oh, it's fine.
Okay. But I give him credit for everything. But while I was when I was in taking some refresher courses, because they told me I could get in next year, I met two ex-GIs that were became good friends of mine in physics courses and organic chemistry courses. We became good friends. I was married and had two small children. They were single and lived in a fraternity, so it was more conducive to study with them in the fraternity than it was in a one-room apartment. So I went over there to study. And at Christmas time, one of these guys threw this paper out on the desk and said, "Here, fill this out." And I said, "What is it, Tim?" And he said, "It's an application to dental school. We decided you're going to dental school with us." I had never even thought about it. I said application in, and the irony of this is I got in and they didn't.
Uh-oh.
I mean, it's crazy. But here again, they didn't have enough hours. I had already had a degree and had enough hours to get in and get accepted. So they came up the next year, and I rented a big house in Kansas City and rented a room to them. My wife cooked for them and did their laundry, and they paid all the rent. You see how God takes care of things. I hope I don't bore you saying this.
No, that's exactly what we want there.
But that's how I can honestly say I got out of dental school debt-free. With the GI Bill. I had a son-in-law graduate from dental school several years later with a $400,000 debt. I see the difference, and I am grateful.
So where did you go to dental school?
University of Missouri in Kansas City.
And graduated when?
1959.
1959. So when were you here at OSU for your undergrad?
49 to 52, and then I came back in 54 and 55 and got to have refresher courses, and then in 55 I went to dental school.
So the first time around you were an ag major, you said?
Yes.
And had your other siblings gone to college?
I was the first one to get to go to college.
How did you finagle that?
I'm not real sure, other than I'm going to say something that'll sound a little egotistical, but I worked hard for my dad on the farm. And we grew vegetables, and I worked hard to sell vegetables, and our family reaped some benefit. We had 13 acres of vegetables. I mean, sweet potatoes, okra, beans, green beans, lima beans, anything you can think of that the grocery stores would buy, I planted and grew. And so my dad wanted to reward me and suggested that I go to school. And I was able to make it.
And that was days of OAMC, Oklahoma A&M.
Yes, Oklahoma A&M College.
At that time.
I was telling Larry, my tuition when the first year I came here was $48 a semester.
That seemed like a lot too, probably at that point. Where did you live?
Well, I started out. That's a good story. Question. Are you familiar with where Tupa Halls was?
I've heard of it, but I'm not sure.
That was the Army barracks down in Stillwater Creek. And I didn't get my application in time and get into a dorm, so I was assigned to Stillwater Creek, to Tupa Halls. And my brother brought me up here, and his wife, and dropped me off at Tupa Halls on Sunday, and it rained all day, all night, and we didn't have a bathroom in the room. So we had a latrine down there. And when I got up the next morning to get ready to come to school, and I had a bicycle, and I got ready to come to school the next morning, Stillwater Creek was out of its banks. My bicycle had washed under the barracks, and I stepped out in knee-deep water. I cannot tell you how depressed I was. I was so discouraged. But I went to church every day up at St. Vincent over here, and I met a guy there that was a junior who had an apartment, and he invited me to move in with him. And I got out of Stillwater Creek.
Where were the barracks located along Stillwater Creek?
You know where Stillwater Hospital is?
Mm-hmm.
It was just south of that.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any of them down there anymore or not. I haven't been down there. They sold them and moved a lot of them out. Sold them.
Was it just a wooden structure? I mean,
Yeah, just a wooden structure.
When you say halls, it's not like a two-story.
On stilts.
Okay.
They built them up because they knew the creek would get out.
And how many would be in?
There's 4 of us. Four in each barracks.
Wow.
But the inconvenience was the latrine situation, and to me that wasn't acceptable. That was not. Well, the first day I stepped out in knee-deep water, that. So but here again, God took care of me.
Seemed like more of a coincidence that you started out with the flood there, and then you've ended up a big part of your life dealing with flood control.
It should be a coincidence there. Yeah. So anyway, I went in the military and.
Were you drafted or did you volunteer?
No, that's another story. I took ROTC, and my battalion commander, when I was a junior, was a senior, and he graduated. He was a good friend of mine. In February of my senior year, I went to his funeral. He got his head shot off in Korea. And I thought, I'm going to go, but I'm not going to go this way. So it took me 9 weeks to get out of ROTC. I decided I'm not going to go as a commissioned officer. I'm not qualified. And I will go, and I had no problem going, but I was going to go. So the day they released me from ROTC, Mother called me from home and said my draft notice was in the mail. They had notified the draft board that I was no longer in ROT in the taxi, and that's okay. I knew that was, and that did, and I have no regrets serving. And I got the GI Bill. That's the best thing that happened to me.
So you well, no, you were drafted, basically.
I was drafted, yeah.
Into what branch?
What branch? The United States Army Corps of Engineers. And I didn't get to select that. They selected that. They told me where I was going to go.
What did you do with?
Well, I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, through basic, and then I was assigned to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, which was Engineer Center Regiment, and I taught school there. I taught engineering construction foreman school.
Really?
Well, that helped too when you were coming to plan into the further.
It all ties together, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
But your degree was in agriculture.
Yes.
But you get into engineering.
Yeah. Who knows how the Army does things?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you were discharged when?
In 1952. I mean, 1954.
1950.
I was in from 52 to 54, and I got back here in time to start the school in fall of 54 and finished those 2 semesters, and then I went to Kansas City in 55.
To dental school, okay. And then once you finished dental school, take us on through what happened then when you graduated from dental school.
Well, I didn't want to come back to Oklahoma. I wanted to go to Colorado. I had this in the back of my mind. In the industry, in the dental business, Colorado was just, everybody said it was a good place to go. So my grandfather came here from France and spoke French fluently. And our family dentist was a French dentist who spoke French fluently. So I came home from my grandfather's funeral in my senior year, and this dentist was there at the funeral. They had become good friends. And he said, and he had approached me about coming back and going in with him, and I told him no, I wasn't going to do that. So at the funeral, he approached me about coming back and taking his practice, and he was going to go to Europe for a 6-month vacation. And the terms of that agreement was that I had to pay the rent on his office in the bank building. He had a receptionist and an assistant that had 2 small children and not a husband, and I had to pay her salary, keep her employed, and pay the rent. And this is a bird nest on the ground. I could have everything I made after I paid all of that. You don't get out of dental school and go into a ready-made dental practice. Here again, thank you. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So he was on a train going down to Madrid, Spain, and they had sprayed it with DDT, and he was allergic to DDT, and he got deathly ill and wound up back here and went to Mayo's and died. I inherited his dental practice. I didn't want it. I didn't even want to come here. But it's been good to me. Sometimes God guides us when we don't know what's good for ourselves. So.
And how long were you in that?
47 years. I practiced 47 years. I tell people I practiced 47 years and never did learn how, so I quit. And I've been retired 17.
17. Okay, let's back up and talk a little bit about your wife then before we move into the water. When did you meet?
She was a high school sweetheart. And when I came up to OSU, I had several girlfriends, but it seemed like she was the one I was supposed to go back to. Bottom line. So we did. And when I finished, when I found out I was going to go, we went ahead and got married. And my first son was born. I was stationed at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. She didn't come there. She stayed here in Shawnee. And my first son was born in that year. And then my second son was born just before I got out. And so we had 2 small children and went back to Stillwater. But she was a homemaker.
And what was her name?
Mary Louise Heelan, H-E-L-E-A-N, Heelan, Mary Louise.
Mary Louise.
Mary Lou, yeah.
And you got married when?
In 1952.
Let's test your memory. What month and year? No.
So.
And you've been in Shawnee ever since?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So then let's transition into how did you get involved with water?
Well, here again, I said my affinity for farms. So when I got back into dental practice, first thing I did, I bought some acreage and was going to build a house. And before I built a house, I drilled a well. And I drilled 4 wells and finally got a diviner. You know what a diviner is?
Oh, yeah.
And I got a diviner to find me. I didn't get enough water for a family of, by the time I got out of dental school, I had 5 children. And so the family of 7, there was not enough water, 3 gallons a minute. So I got the diviner and he located me a well and we drilled, and then I went ahead and built a home. And I think it was 1979, lightning struck my well and burnt my pump up. And so all day Saturday, I pulled the well and put a new pump in. And next Saturday, 1 week later, the same thing happened. Lightning struck and burnt my pump up. And the insurance company said, no, we're not going to play that game. We've already paid you. And I said, well, my pump burned up. So I decided to find an alternate source of water. It was just too stressful. So that's when I started trying to put in a rural water district. And I got a farm home administration loan and grant. And we put in Bethel rural water. We were going to do the whole county. That farm home said, you're not smart enough to do that. And they literally said that. You don't have any experience. Start where the rooftops are the greatest and then expand from there. So I put in a rural water district at Bethel. And in order to do that, we had to purchase treated water from Shawnee because we didn't have a treatment plant. and we didn't have a well that would produce sufficient for that. So we got an agreement with Shawnee to sell us treated water. And so we were getting along fine. In 1982, Shawnee had a drought. We had a drought. And Shawnee notified me they were going to cut us off. Well, I had 557 customers that were dependent on water that were going to be without water. So I borrowed the money and drilled a well, and I hired the engineering firm over at Norman, Settle and Spears, who was supposed to be the gurus of the Garber Formation. And I drilled a well, paid $87,000 for it, never got a drop of water out of it. All I ever got was quicksand. But thank God again, Shawnee got rain and they didn't cut me off. But I thought I need to do something different. So there was an article in the Shawnee newspaper and about what I was trying to do. And Tom Steed was our congressman, and he decided not to run anymore. So there was a group of 23 people that signed up to replace him, and Wes Watkins was one of them. And I think what is so significant about this is there were 23 people, and he won that election without a runoff. He won 51% of the vote over 22 other people. I didn't have a clue who he was, and I know I didn't vote for him. But anyway, I get this phone call. Said, I'm Congressman Wes Watkins, and I've been reading in the Shawnee paper about what you're trying to do, and I want to help you. Now, that's the truth. That's the way this happened. And so he started making appointments in Washington for me to come up there. And for 5 years, I went to Washington and testified before the House and Senate Appropriations about our needs. And Wes made all those arrangements every year. And whether you record this or not, it was bothersome. Every year for 5 years, David Bourne didn't show up. Wes Watkins did, but David Bourne didn't. And so we kept going back. Well, the 6th year, Wes called me and said, you need to come back. And I said, Wes, I'm not coming back. I said, it's a waste of time. And I'm just not coming back. And he argued with me. And therein lies the Wes Watkins Reservoir. But he argued with me. And finally I said, okay, Wes, here's the deal. I'll take this to my board. I paid my own way every year. And I took this to the board, and if they'll pay my way, I'll come back.
And what year was that?
Oh, shoot. I've got it over there, but that would have been...
Late 80s?
80... I think 87.
Yeah, okay.
87. And I said, he said, you need to come back. So I went to my board, and they said, by all means, go. We'll pay your way. I said, how are you going to get the money? We don't have any money. And the secretary for the trust was city manager of the company. He said, we'll figure it out. And I trusted. He's a good guy. So anyway, I went to Washington, and you've flown in and out of Washington. So the story I'm going to tell you, you'll identify with. But anyway, every year they briefed me about Texas is in there first, and when they get through, you go in. And I opened the gallery door, and the room was full of Texans, and so I'm standing out in the hall, and Bourne walks up. And he said, are you Dr. Taron? And I said, yes, sir. I'm David Bourne. Pleased to meet you. So he goes in, comes back out, and said, come on. Well, everybody already told me I wouldn't go in until after Texas got through, and they were in there, I know. So I didn't go in. And so he comes back to the door and said, come on. So I go in there. And he walks up there and he said, now, Pat, we need to take care of these people. They've been up here for 5 years in a row, and I've got to go back and deal with them if we don't. And you don't know how these Okies are to deal with. I'll never forget this. And Patrick Moynihan said, I do too. I grew up in Tulsa.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So it took me about 30 seconds to thank him for letting me come there and give him the written testimony and excuse myself. And when he and Boren got up in the chambers there, it's like a judge's chambers. There's doors on both sides. They went in the back. And when they come back out, I was out in the hall, and he came back out, and he said, you got your money. And it really made me mad. Because every year, his aide told me he's at home sick today. For 5 years, he was at home sick every time I was there. And then the 6th year, he showed up, and we get our money. But that, you know, I was going to tell you about the trip into Washington. If you fly into Washington, D.C., and I was on Continental Airline, they have to come out like this because the buildings are so tall. So I was in the back row on Continental Airline. I was going to Atlanta to change planes and come to Oklahoma City. When our plane took off, I was strapped into my seat. It broke off from its mooring, and I went rolling down the aisle. And the stewardesses just, they were pounced, and they moved me up into first class and apologized. I said, I'm not hurt. Crap happens. This is mechanical. And so they just hovering over me, and I said, look, I'm not mad, I'm not hurt, and I'm not going to sue you. And then she told me there will be 2 people in red coats in Atlanta, and they want to talk to you. Okay. So when I got out there, I said, look, I'm not mad, I'm not going to sue you, I'm not hurt, but don't make me miss my connecting flight. I will be upset because I got appointments at my office tomorrow. And so they had a courier take me and they held the plane, but they reimbursed me all my expenses, you see, and gave me 2 free tickets anywhere in the United States. I gave them away. I have not flown since.
That was the last time you flew?
That was the last time I flew. But they took care of my expenses. PCDA didn't have to.
That's interesting.
So,
I had not heard that.
The point is, when people started saying this needs to be Joe Taron Reservoir, no, I gave up. Wes Watkins didn't. And that's why I insisted it be Wes Watkins Reservoir. And it needed to be. There were, in the process of construction, it went so smooth. Well, you know what I told Joe Skeen. Wes told me not to say it again. But when Wes was advising us, he said, I want you to go with the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And because it takes the Corps of Engineers forever to make a decision, and the NRCS make a decision. And that was good advice. We went with NRCS. The problem with going with NRCS, they were limited to 25,000 acre feet. And if it was above that, it was the Corps of Engineers or the Bureau of Reclamation. So we went with and the first design was over 25,000 acre feet. So we had to move the dam and got it within the parameters of the NRCS. But, you know, those are all interesting things that people, if they see a need today and wanted to participate in some type of federal program, they need to know what's available.
Remember when you moved the dam that to get the 25,000 acre feet, that is the largest dam that you could build according to the statute. Yeah. And I always tell everybody we had 1 cupful less than 25,000 acre feet. But it just
I'm not sure we didn't fudge a little bit with the cost benefit, but it's okay. We got it.
Were you involved in the planning? The work plan was signed in 1986. Were you involved in the planning with the Tecumseh and Shawnee?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Was that quite a process?
Well, you know, what the NRCS gave us was minuscule as far as the actual cost of the facility. But it gave us a leg up in order to go beyond that and issue debt. And so once we were approved, we applied for the water rights in North Deer Creek and were awarded those water rights, and went through all of the parameters of wildlife and conservation. And I mean, everybody had to sign off on this thing and be sure. I've got all of that in that document over there. And but we had to have the public hearings, which NRCS come up and held the hearings up there. In that final draft that I've got, there were 187 people protested building it in McLeod. And in the public hearings, they were worried about all kind of crazy stuff. But we were able to prevail. And today, they fought us. McLeod fought us big time. And today, now they're trying to change the name. Right now, they're trying to change to McLeod City Lake. It won't happen. Over my daddy body, it won't happen. But
why were they against it?
All kinds of things. We were going to take property off the tax rolls. And the bottom line is there has been so much construction around that lake that the tax rolls have nothing but exploded. They didn't know those things. Mm-hmm. You fear what you don't know. And so I think they opposed it because they didn't know. And maybe we didn't do a good job of explaining it. You know, we didn't know. We were flying by the seat of our pants too, just trying to get water. But the uniqueness of this thing was that we issued, PCDA issued $21 million worth of AAA insured tax exempt bonds. We had no income, no assets, and no resources. And when you tell finance people that you did that, they say it's not possible. But we hired good people. We hired a good NRCS to advise us. We hired a good financial consultant, and we hired a good bond counsel. And they were able to advise us, and we were able to get a note from Shawnee and Tecumseh to agree to purchase all the water out of that lake and amortize the debt as a result.
And when you say we, who are you referring to?
PCDA, Pot County Development Authority.
And how many people are we talking about?
We got a 7-member board. We're a county trust. And we were constituted to put in the water district. That's why we were formed, was put in a water district because it was determined that areas of the county had poor water in wells, and so we put in a municipal water supply. And that's when we went to Farm Home Administration, and they said, look, do Bethel Acres, that's the greatest density of rooftops, and then expand from there. You can't do the whole county. We're not going to help you. So they gave us $750,000 grant, $750,000 loan, which we paid off in January of 19. 40 years. Wow. We paid our note off in 2019. And we were able to put in a water district, and then as we discovered we didn't have a source of supply when Shawnee notified us, we needed to get a source, and were able to issue that debt. And Shawnee got 85% of the water and paid 85% of the debt. Tecumseh got 15% of the water, and they paid off 15% of the debt. And you remember Janice. Every month she billed them. And we had the Bank First was our trustee bank that managed the bond proceeds. And we defeased or refinanced those bonds 3 different times. It was 90, 91, 93, and the last ones was 2000.
How much is left on the bonds to pay off? Do you know?
They're all paid off.
They're completely paid off.
They're completely paid off.
And that's what was finished up in January of last year?
Yeah.
All the bonds.
Yeah, all the bonds are paid off. Shawnee's debt free as far as paying for the water. But I don't have any water I can sell. It's all sold. It's all committed, which is fine. In the process, I got an agreement with Shawnee that they would agree, as a result of me furnishing them water, they would agree to furnish me, PCDA, 100,000 gallons of treated water a day. So I've got a guarantee now. They can't cut me off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I wanted was water.
Hmm.
So we got that.
How was it working? How did you get all of the entities working together for the original plan to come up with this plan? Did you just go to the different
Yes,
towns?
we had meeting after meeting after meeting. And, you know, there was an accusation at one time that my brother was the mayor of Shawnee and that there was some nepotism. But the truth of the matter was he got defeated as mayor. He was mayor and then he wasn't the mayor. And when these papers were signed, he was not the mayor. There was no nepotism, with me being chairman of the trust. And also there were some people that had a problem with that. As a matter of fact, let me show, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead. So this was for water, flooding, and recreation. Ended up being.
Yeah, a little bit of flood control, water supply primarily, and then recreation facilities.
It started out, I guess, for flood control. Well,
Started out really for water,
For
yes.
water.
During the course of his being mayor and not being mayor and then mayor, there was an article in the paper that was accused of the Taron fiefdom going to take over McLeod. And that was the furthest thing from our mind. But that's the way people see things, you know. But there was a lot of adversity, but we were able to overcome the adversity because we had, I think, credibility. And I don't think I ever lied to anybody about anything. You know, I told the truth as I knew it. And you're not going to get in trouble if you tell the truth. You know, I mean, that's how I always felt. But anyway, now they want it. They want to run it. They want to operate it. So, and they'll admit their tax base is way, way, way up from where it was. But you see, it's all in the eyes of the beholder. What you perceive, what you see. I don't know how you educate people about that. I'm in the process right now of going through long-range planning for Potawatomi County. That's where Dr. Wood comes in. And hopefully we'll come up with and identify our assets and our shortcomings, and I am scared to death as I sit and look at our society today. Our culture is changing at rapid pace with the Internet of Things and artificial cloud-based technology. I don't know how we keep up. I don't know how we're going to keep up. But we've got to educate people. We've got to educate people. I heard on the radio where Mid-American Christian University, they advertise on the radio all the time. They started a program in data analytics. That makes a lot of sense. It's out there. That data's all over the place. But how do you make it make sense? How do you make it come together and meet? That's important. You know, I've been really, really, really involved in watershed program and soil health because I believe in it. That's the secret to clean water. That's the secret to clean water. But 2% of the population manage over 70% of our farmland. We got to educate the farmers the importance of clean water and siltation and nutrient runoff. We've got to, and the NRCS is doing a great job. I'm not being critical of that, but how do you get people? In other words, NRCS can't do this 100%. So I'm a farmer out here, and you say, look, if you will do this, 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 and this, we'll pay 70% and you pay 30%. How do you get me to want to pay my 30% and see the value in it? You see, that's a problem. But the farmers that are doing it are stepping forward and testifying everywhere that it has paid off for me. And if I'm going to survive as a farmer, this is how we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to know, you know, the nexus of energy, water, and food cannot be denied. I cannot pump a gallon of water without electricity. Over 80% of the electricity that's generated depends on water to do it. And of course, we all know how important food is. It needs water to do it. So that nexus cannot be divorced. They got to be melded. And my concern is, how do you do that? How do you educate people? And I'm on a committee down at East Central University. I think I was telling you about this, about one of our graduate students is writing a 5th grade textbook on water.
5th grade.
And this is so important.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I use as an example sometime about how important it is to teach our young people. The Department of Public Safety had a program, Click It or Ticket. And they did a good job. And every morning, I did this morning, pick up my grandkids, take them to school. And some days I will deliberately not have buckled my seatbelt. One of them will remind me. They did a good job. The Department of Public Safety did a good job of their role, their purpose. We've got to do a better job. You, OSU's got to do a better job.
Do you see that as one of the biggest challenges you had to deal with on the formation of the North Deer Creek plan, is educating
the community
leaders?
Educating the people.
Would you say that was one of the bigger challenges you had?
And you know, I went through 4 different mayors of McLeod, and once you could sit down with them, I have letters from all 4 of them rescinding their objections. You know, they said, well, we were wrong, you know, but what about the road modifications? What about the bridges? You know, all that'll be taken care of.
Work it out.
You know, but they're spooky. So then what ifs? You know, I guess one of the biggest disappointments was we got a letter over there. We got a letter from a Shawnee Conservation District board member opposing to this, Leroy Bryan. But he was negative. Leroy was negative about everything.
Did you get him turned around?
Huh?
Did you get him turned around?
Yeah. And all, but we were able to deal with those things. And thank God, I mean this, thank God for the leadership in the NRCS, knowing what we were going to be getting into and knowing how to address it as we progress. And it all went smoothly. I'm going to tell you something. I believe once we got into the construction phase, and the NRCS gave us $3.233 million grant. I mean, a pledge. That wasn't anywhere close to what they furnished on this project, because they did the inspection through the whole project, and that was worth far more than $3.233 million. And it went so smoothly because they knew what they were doing. But I want this to be somewhere in your records. The smartest thing that we did, I think, was Rena Connor's idea. Every week we had partnering meetings, and everybody that was involved sat down, and if you've got a grievance, tell me about it. We're going to work through this grievance today. The partnering was the best thing that we ever did. And if you do another one now, I recommend partnering.
Yeah, that cut off any things from growing into bigger issues. And
yeah.
Recall that.
Yeah.
That was the best example that we'd had in the state up until then, and I think since then, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing I recall with working with PCDA was there was just an excellent working relationship between the people that were involved.
Yeah,
First,
that's right.
Janice Wood and Gerald Younger and Chuck Thomas and
Chuck Thomas, and Joey Freeland.
Joe Freeland.
All of those guys. I respected everyone. And Rena, let me tell you what, she held our feet to the fire. She was a taskmaster, and I had a lot of respect for her. Mm-hmm. Janice did too.
Mm-hmm. Janice was fantastic. I mean, the attention to detail and the follow through with what needed to be done.
Yeah.
You all had the best team working together from all sides.
I can't say I can't say enough about that. I mean, from a financial consulting deal, after it was all over, I think it was in 2000 or 2001, I sat before a United States Securities Commission attorney. His name was Steve Cortash. I'll never forget him, from Washington, D.C. Came down to our office and questioned me for 3 hours, trying to decide if our financial consultant had broke the law in a guaranteed investment contract that he had reinvested our money. And he was trying to get me to say something bad about this guy. But he got it done. That's what we had to have. None of us were smart. None of us knew how to do these things. But we hired the right kind of people to do the job. And we got it done. And he got exonerated, by the way. But some financial institution in Oklahoma City got mad because he didn't invest the defeasance of the bonds. He didn't, in that guaranteed investment contract, he didn't invest it with them. He went to another firm. And this Steve Forte, this attorney, asked me, he said, well, did you know he was going to make money? I said, do what? I said, are you making money? You're not working for nothing. He's got to make a living, yes. He didn't tell me he was going to make money, but I knew he was going to make money. But they didn't want to hear it that way. But he was trying to find fault because some bank in Oklahoma City got mad and they didn't invest that way. Filed charges against him, but he got exonerated. And that's all I cared about, because he was a good guy. Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen him since, but he was a good guy.
Mm-hmm. A lot of pieces come together.
God blessed us with a lot of good pieces. And because I wasn't smart enough to know.
But you provided the leadership to get the good people and to make sure everybody worked together.
I don't know so much the leadership, but tenacity. I wasn't going to give up.
Perseverance.
What was the original payoff on a schedule on the bonds versus what actually, did you pay them off early or was it on schedule?
Actually, Shawnee paid those off, and I don't know. And I've asked for a document on it. They went to the Water Resources Board and got a better rate and borrowed the money from the Water Resources bed through Joe Freeman. You know Joe.
Oh, yes.
They went to Joe Freeman and got the money through him, through that program that he ran. the safe drinking water, or I forget, but you know what he did. And so they borrowed the money to pay the bonds off. But I don't have that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
well, it was quite an accomplishment just to get the project completed and working, and then to pay it off on top of that. I mean, that is huge for a community.
Yeah, that was a whole different deal. And I called you about Johnny Messett down at Hugo. They've got the awfulest mess down there. I'm still trying to help him. I got Joe Freeman involved. And this is not part of this, but they were under consent order from the Department of Environmental Quality. And if they didn't start something, and that's what I told him, you better get going on fixing it, whatever it is, because they had notified me they'd fine them $25 a day, $25,000 a day if they don't fix it. And so I got Joe involved, and Joe went to the DEQ with them. Not only did they forgive the consent order, but they just fined them $500. So that was good for me to get Joe hooked up with them, and I tried to get him involved, but there just wasn't anything through NRCS that I knew that, but I was turning stones.
Yeah.
So
you're not really retired.
No.
How hard was it to get easements for all of that? I'm assuming you had to do
easements. NRCS did all the surveys on it. That's another benefit that we received that nobody gives anybody credit for, but we didn't have to pay for. But they did the easements. We had one lawsuit and one inverse condemnation lawsuit because of their error. You know that?
Yes.
They told some people we were going to take their land through the original survey, and then said, oops, we made a mistake. We're not going to take your land. Well, it just so happened this guy had two daughters that were lawyers, and they said, yeah, you're going to take it. You told us you were going to, so you're going to take it. But here again, it's an ill wind that blows no good at all. We went ahead and took it, went through the adverse condemnation process. We took the land and sold it for more than we had to pay for it.
And in this case, you got fee title. You purchased, there was not an easement, it was fee title. How many different parcels there was a lot of parcels of land that you bought, total of about what? 3,000 acres?
3,000 acres, 3,100 acres.
3,100 acres.
Yeah.
A lot of parcels.
We had one lawsuit where we had to go through through eminent domain. I arrive at a price and I tell you, I want to buy your land and I'm going to give you X amount of dollars. And this is statutory, this is by law. I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars. And you say, what do you do? No, I can statutorily raise that 10%. That's all I can do. And make you a counter offer 10% more. And if you tell me no, then it goes through eminent domain, condemnation. And we went through on this process, and he had to get his appraisers. We had to get our appraisers, and the court appointed appraisers. And they come up with a fee for this 80 acres. Okay? They averaged that fee, and they said, okay, you can pay him $1,500 an acre for it. So we offered him $1,500 an acre for it. He said, no, it's worth more than that. So then it goes to trial. You know what the court gave him? The jury gave him $1,300 an acre. So sometimes it's not always smart to bow up and say, I'm in charge, because you're not in charge. I don't know if you remember that or not, but that's how we did it. So this was a learning experience for me.
Sure, I mean, it flooded, once the dam was made, then it floods a lot of...
Yeah, they had to purchase all of the land within that area.
And there were probably homes.
The other concern that I have in looking at laws and is we were not competent, even though we put a plan for downstream management, you know, hazardous dam. We put together a plan. We didn't know what we were doing. I think in the future, if we build dams, that the decision makers need to be informed that there is a problem downstream once you put an earthen dam in place, and that they need to be aware so that when they start granting permits, they need to be aware that they're creating a different situation.
Absolutely.
Because when they grant permits to build a housing development in the watershed, then they're creating a hazardous situation. And we need to inform decision makers better.
I agree. It's
How do
hard
you do that?
It's hard to have that regulatory control in Oklahoma.
That's right. That's exactly right.
But at least they need to know the danger they're putting themselves and their community.
I inform my legislators. I tell them, and my county commissioners, before you allow somebody a permit to go in there, let's talk about this.
Perfect.
So, but these are things I've become aware of, and how do I get other people to be aware of them? It's important. But my bottom line is education, education, education.
And in the process, you had to, close at least one county road, correct?
Yeah, we closed one county road. We built a new bridge, and we raised Harrah Waller Road because at flood stage we would inundate that. So we had to raise Harrah Waller Road and put a bridge on 74th Street and close one. So,
what can you talk about the recreation facilities and that?
The recreation facility in the bond indenture, when we issued the debt, there's a securities agreement in it, and to satisfy the securities agreement, one of my board members was a city manager of Shawnee, and one of them was a city manager of Tecumseh. And in this securities agreement, knowing that we had no experience at all in managing a recreational facility, and Shawnee did, the city manager of Shawnee agreed that Shawnee would operate and maintain a recreational facility. So that was part of the bond indenture and the securities agreement. And also, when we got our funding, we were told by the Natural Resource Conservation Service that our money would come over 5 years. We weren't going to get it in the lump sum. It would be a 5-year project. And we knew that up front. Okay. In the course of evolvement, this city manager left and went back to Salisaw, and we get a new city manager. Okay, he gets on my board. So now we finished in August of '99, we finished the recreation, and we're ready to open it up for recreation. So I tell the city manager of Shawnee, you need to get your people in place because we're going to open this thing up. He said, what the hell are you talking about? I said, it's in this agreement. You're going to do the operation and maintenance of the recreation facility. Hell, we're not going to do that. And I said, it's in the agreement. And he said, well, we're not going to do it. So from the time we opened it up, for 11 years, we, PCDA, knowing our agreement with NRCS, what we were supposed to do, we operated and maintained that facility for 11 years. In that agreement, if we were not able to generate enough revenue to pay the operation maintenance on the facility, Shawnee would have to pay 85% of the shortfall, and Tecumseh, because they're getting 85% of the water, 15% of the shortfall. We also had to develop a budget, and if we anticipate the shortfall, we had to notify them before their budget time. This all makes sense. Before their budget time, that we anticipate a shortfall, and we want you to include it in your budget. So after 11 years, we notified Shawnee that we anticipated a shortfall. And the city manager, a different city manager now, at that time, didn't agree. And he went through the document and he saw in there where, well, hey, we're supposed to be doing this. His wife was a consultant to the city of McCann, a planning consultant for the city of McLeod. He said, we will just do that and give it to McLeod. So they refused to budget money for operation and maintenance after 11 years, but they gave it to McLeod and agreed to pay McLeod the shortfall. So they've done that now for 10 years. And about 2 years ago, I got a person, knowing I don't have a lease on tomorrow in my age, I felt important. PCDA in West Watkins is important to me. But also, I want to see that it's done according to the way we agreed to do it. So I got a person that I had a lot of respect for to come on my board. I resigned as chairman and turned the chairmanship over to him. And so he's been working on this thing, but he doesn't agree with me. And he wants McLeod to continue. We did it. We had personnel and we had a payroll and and everything. He doesn't want to be involved in running the facility. He wants McLeod to do it. That's okay. That's okay if it's done according to our agreement. And I keep telling them it's going to be done according to our agreement with NRCS, according to federal standards. And so I think it is. We've got a person that took my place and Janice's place. Janice was the driving force that kept it going. But Steve Schultz is this new guy, and he understands fully our agreement with the 89 agreement, I call it, with NRCS. And he's got the fences back secured where people were cutting the fences and getting lake access at their private property. It just got, after McLeod took it over, it went to hell in the handbasket. They didn't do anything. They didn't do anything. And in my opinion, and NRCS furnished us with some aerial photographs of some siltation that was taking place. But Steve is up there every day. He understands watershed. He understands, and I'm glad Steve, here again, how did I get Steve? God put him in my life. And Larry, I can walk away and say I have no regrets.
That's what you were hoping for 2 years ago. That's what you were striving for.
I can walk away and say I have no regrets because I think he understands what I agreed to with NRCS 25 years ago. And I feel comfortable it will be done.
Does he interact with you a lot?
Yes, all the time.
That means a lot.
Yeah. And he's a good mechanical type person. He understands. He understands not mowing the grass right down to the waterfront. So we get a little bit of riparian area. We get a little bit of filtration rather than letting it silt into the. He understands those things. And he's aggravating the Department of Transportation brought an easement right there at New Waller Road, and they're going to change that cloverleaf. And they bought an easement from us to bring that from the westbound traffic's going to go right over on the New Waller Road instead of going out and coming around. And I've alerted him to that. So he stays in touch with the engineer over at the department. We're not going to do anything there till 26. Steve said, I know, but I want you to know I'm paying attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are the number of visitors going up?
Yes.
For the recreation facilities?
Yes, yes. And he has done some things that we went up to McMurtry and visited with them how they do things. Well, I think some of you guys went with us. But anyway, and they're helping us. So he's got good people advising him. So I feel good about West Watkins right now. Other than I don't want McLeod abusing it. They didn't understand. They opposed it, then they didn't understand. And then the latest was they wanted to change the name to McLeod City Lake, and I bowed up on that. I didn't call Wes and tell him, but that'll be my next phone call.
What was the process for naming it?
We, PCDA, own the facility.
So you could choose.
And there's no question about it. We own the container. We don't own any water, but we own that container. And it is ours for 100 years, the life of the project. And at the end of that project, we are to, by warranty deed a proportionate share to Shawnee and Tecumseh for their contribution. And I've got those percentages all figured out, and I've given them to 3 different city managers in Shawnee, that at the end of, at 100 years from August the 2nd, 99, somebody needs to be aware of this and do it.
And at that point, someone could change the name?
Right now, we have control of that, but maybe after 100 years, yeah. But I won't be around to care.
Does McLeod get their water from?
No. We offered them water, but they said they had plenty of water. And then that's when they started really fighting us. And so, no, there's no water available for McLeod.
To this day, they do not get it. Right there, closest to it. And
yeah, they should have. In the original plan, we were going to make a treatment plant right there at the dam and a distribution there. The original plan was to do that. And then when McLeod backed out, we didn't do it.
Well, since we're talking about names, do you want to talk about the name of the dam?
Well, that was the West Watkins deal. I think he's the one that did it. West Watkins said to somebody, I think it's that.
Is that the dedication?
It's the dedication. Without Joe Taron Dam, and that's the first I'd heard that. Without the Joe Taron Dam, there wouldn't be any West Watkins Reservoir.
I thought that was just a classic comment that's so true.
Yeah. So anyway, we have done no official naming or anything of it, and I don't care if we do, but that I got a picture from you that named it that. Yeah, I've got that picture at my house. I may give that to the PCDA office and tell them, don't forget this.
That large picture?
Yeah.
Yes. No, we've done everything we can to promote that as Joe Taron Dam. That's right.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Dedication Day. What was that like?
Dedication Day.
I'm assuming Wes was there and you were there.
Wes and Lou was there, and my wife was still alive, and she was there, and all my children were there. And Wes went to the trouble to get up on top of the intake tower and open it, which that's a tough deal to get up there. I didn't, but Wes did. You remember?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he was officially closing the gates on the dam so that it would start collecting water at that point. But it was like a 50-foot tall tower, and I remember that wheel when we were going to close it and all, but then it's geared down so low that it would take 2 hours to turn that down. So we turned it down to just the last little bit. So Wes took the last few turns to close the gates, and that was a fitting ending to that project.
But you know, I got a phone call one time. You made me think about closing that gate. I got a phone call one time during the course of construction, and the contractor said, or maybe it was, I think it was Chuck Thomas. Did somebody close the gate? And I said, no. Why would we? And called me back in a little while and said, well, we found the problem. Said the beavers had stopped up that pipe, completely plugged it up, and they were making water. They were backing water up in the lake. And so they got a backhoe or track hoe in there and dug that all out and put it back up out of the way. And overnight, the beavers moved every bit of it back into that pipe again. They are ingenious. But that was just one of the little. And dealing with landowners, it's been, as a matter of fact, I've got a lot of friends that were adversarial at first, but we saw eye to eye, and they will admit today that they didn't want to lose their property, but it's worked out okay.
How long did it take for the lake to fill up?
Not very long. We got a 7-inch rain. Oh, I can't remember for sure. About a year after we closed the gates, we got a 7-inch rain, and it all but went over our emergency spillways. Wow. It never did. It never has gone over the emergency spillways on that lake. And I think that's a 100-year flood, isn't it? Or is it a 500-year flood?
No, it's a 100-year, but that's on top of the conservation pool.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Assuming the water supply is full also. So there's a lot of capacity there. But
I don't know if it was Larry or Chuck or who it was. Somebody called me from NRCS and said, "Hey, you guys are breaking the law." I said, "Really? What are we doing?" "Well, your lake is down below your municipal pool and you're taking water still." Who called me?
That was Chuck. Yeah,
it was Chuck. And he said, we have on your behalf, we have documented a drought, but don't do it again without notifying us. Well, we didn't know to notify them. We should have, but if we'd have read all the documents, we should have known, but we didn't know. But that's the only time we've ever had to do it. And there is a specification in there that if it comes to that we can apply for and use the different water out of the different detention pool and so forth. But anyway.
And the planning for this took 20-something years?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I think we documented that the first talk about it was late 70s in there, and then 70s. It was signed in, 90, or no, 86.
I tell people, I told Johnny Massett down there at Holdenville, I said, "Johnny, if you think you're going to need water in the next 20 years, you better be planning it right now." And I finally got him to go to the governor's water conference with me. Mm-hmm. And he said, I can't justify paying city fees to do that. And I said, "I'll pay your way if you'll just go, because I can introduce you to some people that are great resource people." Mm-hmm. And he went away and he called me back and he said, "I met 12 people that are helping me."
Mm-hmm. Good.
So it was worth the effort. It was worth the effort.
Well, I know it seemed like a long time, but that work plan was signed in 1986.
Yeah.
And the whole dam was completed in 1995.
Yeah.
And that is just unheard of. I mean, in a 9-year period, there's not another project in the state of Oklahoma, and I would say the nation, on that size of a project for a $20 million project, that it got all completed in that period of time.
Well,
that's
and
phenomenal.
It's crazy how funding goes, and money's not my forte. But when we bid that, I think we had 13 contractors. It come in $4 million under engineer's estimate because there was a bunch of hungry people out there wanting work, right? Mm-hmm. And so it come in $4 million under estimate.
And it all worked out. There were some challenges along the way.
The benefit of the time.
Yeah.
You know, and timing sometimes might be a good planning device. Mm-hmm. We didn't plan it. We didn't know to plan it, but that might be a good planning. Just look at the markets and look at construction. And another thing that I think NRCS afforded us, which I had never heard of, and that was their awareness of soil cement on the face of the dam. That's the first time I'd ever heard of it, and I think you guys brought it in out of Colorado, wasn't it?
Yes, and there was one project in Oklahoma in 1959, that
Okay.
long ago, and it still is very functional.
But the soil cement, but that worked out good.
That's for prevent erosion on the front slope of the dam. Put soil cement in there, which is just a weak cement mixture of cement mixed with the soil. And
So, anyway, I just can't say enough about how much I appreciate Wes's advising us to work with the NRCS. That was good advice. I'll always say it was good advice. And the people that benefited from it are all happy.
And you did this on your own time. I mean, you was outside of
Well,
the 8 to 5
Yeah.
most of the time.
almost all the time.
I just had good encouragement from good people.
And I'm assuming your wife was very supportive of all
Yes.
of this extra.
Yeah, she was.
Extra time.
On the original dedication, there was well more than 100 people. There,
Oh,
there was
yeah,
a huge
yeah.
crowd, a very, very nice day.
Yeah.
And then I thought, which was very important, and it's just the people aspect and working relationships. But 10 years after that, Joe arranged for a 10-year anniversary cookout.
Yeah.
And there was almost an equal number of people there to get all back together again
Yeah.
as a reunion to
Yeah.
rehash the old times. And
We chartered a bus for people from Shawnee to go out there.
And did you do it 2019 for the 20th?
No,
What?
no, that was 2009 to the 10th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the 20th would have been this past year.
Well, you're about due for a 25th anniversary here before too long.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, that would be this year. wouldn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. Hadn't thought about that.
Well, I guess the 10-year anniversary was after the recreation facilities
Yeah.
were done
Yeah.
in 99. So,
Yeah, that's right.
but this is the 25th year after the dam was constructed.
Yeah.
So
That's right. You're exactly right.
see another party in your future here.
Yeah. But
Just using your crystal ball backwards, can you imagine what this Shawnee and Potawatomi County would be like without North Deer Creek?
oh yes, and I was looking at the bathymetrics that they furnished prior to, and their projection of population and projection, it's not anywhere close. What they projected is nowhere close. For instance, I was a sponsor. I was the chairman of the Civic and Cultural Trust too, and I went on several trips and got the National High School Final Rodeo to come to Shawnee. They were here for 3 years, and after they left, they charged us to come here. We had to pay them to come. But as a result of getting, and I was chairman of the trust, in order to get them to come here and get a commitment, we had to sell the community then on building a facility that would accommodate it. So we got that done, the Civic and Cultural Trust. And then after they left, we started a rodeo of our own, and it's called the International Finals Youth Rodeo, the biggest youth rodeo in the world. And this was our 25th year to have it, the International Finals Youth Rodeo. But you have to get people to understand and agree with you to do those things. And again, I hope it was because they respected me. That's all that matters to me, is if they respect me. I don't care if you like me or not.
But you were doing all that at the time North Deer Creek was going
Yeah, that's
strong
right.
also.
Yeah.
Did that in your spare time,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah, when did you sleep?
We often wondered that.
But
What do you think? Do you have any idea when you looked at those projections what the population was, say, in 1980 or so compared to what it is today?
well, I can look back and see, yeah, but
It's exploded, hasn't it?
by comparison, I was going to say, when I went and got this rodeo to come to Shawnee, I had to guarantee there's 50 national directors, and I had to provide them a motel room. There were not 50 motel rooms in Shawnee. And so I had to book motels, rooms for them in Chandler, Seminole, and Midwest City, because we just had one motel. Today, I can tell you, excluding the Grand Casino, there are 595 motel rooms. As a result of the rodeo bringing those people to town, and the motel saw a need. But last year, being in the water business, I pay attention. Last year, the attendance, the occupancy rate of the motels, 585 rooms, the occupancy rate was 56%. For every day, according to national standards, for every day of occupancy in a motel room, they use 209 gallons of water. So you can go back and figure they are probably the biggest water users in Shawnee anymore. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
209 gallons per person.
209 gallons, yeah.
Per hotel.
That's the national average. That's what I get that out of the.
And that wouldn't have been possible had
No. But they don't. The tragedy is they don't see that.
Yeah.
They don't know that, and every 4 years, new commissioners are elected. Every 4 years, you got to educate some more people. And the truth is, I'm tired. You know, you just have to keep going back and going back and going back.
Do you, since we're talking about water, do you conserve water at your house?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I started a program at East Central University on conservation, on this Oak Institute. I don't know if you've heard of Oak Institute or not, but there is the Arbuckle-Simpson aquifer. It triggered over the Arbuckle-Simpson aquifer, and that's the only aquifer we really have good data on. The rest of them, we're trying to find out. But as you know, according to statute, I own a farm, and by statute, I have a right to 2 acre-feet of the water underneath me for every acre I own. As a result of the Arbuckle-Simpson study, the state actually told people that use water out of the Arbuckle-Simpson aquifer, no longer are you not entitled to 2 acre-feet, you're only entitled to 2/10 of an acre-foot per year. They reduced their entitlement as a result of knowing what's under there. And to me, that's pretty significant.
It is.
How has that worked out?
Huh?
How has that worked out? A lot of opposition?
There was opposition, but the Water Resources Board was able to go down there and work with them, and dadgum, I wish I could tell you the lady's name. Over at the Kerr Lab. But anyway, she's so smart. She was able to work with those people and get it all worked out.
Well, a few years ago, you were appointed to the Oklahoma Water Resources Board. What were your experiences there?
Well, an education. I got an education. How things are done, and the interdependence of the Department of Environmental Quality and the Environmental Protection Agency, and they have to communicate with each other because federal funds come down through different agencies. But in order to qualify, you have to meet criteria that they govern. And that to me was an education, and I understand. And the EPA is the federal agency. Environmental Protection Agency. But the Department of Environmental Quality in Oklahoma has primacy over the EPA because they have agreed to govern stricter than the EPA's criteria. So I think it's good. I think the DEQ having primacy is good because I can deal with them much easier than I can deal with EPA. So our conservation people, our DEQ people are all on the same page when it comes to it, and DEQ is easy to deal with. I was under a consent order with the DEQ one time because of low water pressure on the end of my water line, and I had no problem dealing with them. They were good to help me, and I got to. Of course, if I didn't, they were going to fine me $1,000 a day, which is an incentive.
It's an incentive.
Speaking of incentives, I've thought about, is there an way to incentivize farmers participating in EQIP and in these programs that are out. The 2018 Farm Bill was generous. Getting the farmers to use it and agree to step up and pay their participant. Mm-hmm. It's there. I don't know how to incentivize that. I've thought about incentives, but I just don't know.
And like you say, it's a constant education effort. New farmers, new players come in.
Yeah.
They need to know
well,
the basics.
And farmers that are doing it and reaping the benefit are sharing. Mm-hmm. And that's important. Mm-hmm. That they're going to step on their own time. And what is his name? Jerry Emmons?
Mm-hmm. Jimmy Emmons.
Jimmy Emmons, mm-hmm. Yeah. He's done a lot of that. Well. And I appreciate him for doing that. Mm-hmm. But we just need more of it.
Mm-hmm. Did any one of your siblings keep the family farm?
Yes and no. They've all got farms of their own.
Okay, well.
And I divided my place up. I gave three of my daughters 10 acres, and then one of my daughter's son 10 acres, and now her other son wants some. So my farm will be, it's in the city limits of Bethel Acres. It doesn't lend itself well to farming anyway, so it's going where it ought to go. Mm-hmm. When I was on the planning commission for Bethel Acres, I've been criticized a lot for this and cussed for this. But I was able to get the city commission to put a zoning ordinance up to 5 acres, a minimum, 5 acre minimum to build a house on. So we've got a 5 acre minimum in Bethel Acres, and one of the mayor in the last election is a builder, and he tried to change that 5 acre subdivision ordinance to 2 acres, and he got voted out of office over that. They didn't want him coming in there subdividing our land. And my whole approach was, when we have a solid waste disposal, when we have a sewer system, then consider changing that 5 acres. But right now, we can't manage less than 5 acres, letting houses build on 2 acres and a septic system, and we can't do that. So anyway, we still got a 5 acre subdivision ordinance.
You're one of the few committees that looked ahead and realizes that before they had the problem after they did.
Yeah.
We're talking about your family. Do your children, have they heard and understand the stories you've shared with us today?
I've shared piecemeal. I don't know how much I've shared with them. I honestly don't. But piecemeal, some of it. When I received the governor's Water Pioneer Award, they came to that at the Governor's Water Conference. And so there was a little bit of information there, but I don't know. I would appreciate having this. only to share with them.
Absolutely. And they'll appreciate that too.
Yeah, yeah. So
to know what you were doing all of those times when, when they were growing up. And,
yeah. But it's been a life experience.
And it all goes back to your pump burning twice, or getting struck by lightning twice.
Yeah.
That got you into
all of it. That's what started it all. And the insurance company refusing to pay for it the second time. They said, no, we're not going to go that route. We already paid for it. And I said, well, God's in control of where the lightning strikes. I'm not. And I'm telling you, it struck my pump again. So I pulled my well again the next Saturday and put another pump in. That's when I started working.
And became very civic minded at that point. I mean, engaged with.
I think we should be always. If I can't.
Yeah, was your father? What was there a mentor? Who inspired you to?
My mother. My mother was I think she's a saint in heaven right now. Yeah, just putting up with 13 kids. But she stayed she worked at the dry cleaners when she did tailoring. But other than that, she stayed at home. And
was home a farm?
Yeah.
So you would. Yeah. But did you have running water? Did you have running water at that point?
We had a well.
Okay.
Our home burned in 1942, and my sister and brother-in-law burned to death in that. And after that, my dad went and got the neighbors to put up money, and he run a water line from Shawnee, and we got city water. When he rebuilt our house, we had city water. After that, we had a well.
So you were aware of his efforts?
Yes. Yes.
When you, okay.
And for some other reason, I've just been aware of water all my life. Mm. The importance of it for the garden, and the importance of it for sanitation. It's just,
And six trips to DC.
Yes.
To get it done. So you would have met. You mentioned Pearlie Reed earlier.
Yeah, he arranged me a meeting with Pearlie to thank him for doing it for us. And that's what that permit is. The permit to go in and see Pearlie on my briefcase.
Do you have any memories of that from?
Other than he was very gracious and jealous. He said, I want to come down and fish in West Watkins. And I said, you come and I'll take you. But he never did make it.
Mm-hmm. He's a busy man.
Yeah.
I know Joe is the best spokesperson for the watershed program, that he lived it and made it work and could see the results of it. And he had the best testimonial on what you can do with everybody working together in the community.
But the bottom line right now, I still believe strongly in the importance of the watershed program. And the EPA 319H in protecting that water that runs off of impervious surfaces. To me, we're creating our own problems. We're putting rooftops and parking lots in, but we're not slowing that water runoff down. Mm-hmm. And the people that make decisions are the ones that need to know this. They're the ones we need to educate. It scares me to death about me having an issue and not making that known to the people that make the decisions, because there's a lobbyist on the other side putting his side in. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not countering that, and I have that responsibility, if I'm not countering that, then I'm not doing my job. So, and I've told my legislators, they get sick of listening to me. But if there's a lobbyist comes to you about water, I want to know what it's about. And I said, I will shoot straight with you every time, but I don't want somebody getting some permission to do something that's going to contaminate or, pollute our water.
Do you make it a point whenever there's a new legislator elected or county
Yes.
commissioners to
I go
meet
sit down
him
with him.
personally?
Yeah.
That in itself says a lot.
So you make lots of trips
Yeah,
to the
I think
state
that's
capitol.
important. And we as citizens have a responsibility to do that.
That's fantastic.
I have in my notes that you helped develop the 50-year state water plan.
Yeah. You know, that's interesting too. I was on the legislature appointed me on that Water 2060 committee. There was 15 of us on Water 2060, and from all disciplines, oil and gas and municipal and farms and rural water and everything. And we spent 2 years interviewing all these different agencies that use water. And at the end of this 2-year study, the committee came up with recommendations to the legislature on actually 8 recommendations. The problem with those recommendations were that they all had a bottom line. And in 2015, when we took that recommendation to the legislature, we all know they didn't have any money. So as a result, the implementation full scale didn't happen. And it's been about 3 or 4 months ago, I was going over these recommendations that we submitted. And that was in 15 and this is 20, so that's 5 years ago. Most of those things that we recommended are obsolete. Our culture is changing at warp speed. I'll never forget, oh shoot. What's the guy with the NRCS that, I'll think of his name in a minute. There's a guy who plays football with the same name. A football player. I asked him if he was his relative and he said no. Well, anyway, he came to our hearings. I wish I could think of his name. He's with the Conservation, NRCS. Anyway, he came to us and telling us about agriculture and irrigation and stuff like that. And back in 2012-13, the buzzword in irrigation was variable rate, VRI, you know. And his recommendation, though, he had 2 recommendations that we sent to the legislature. And the other one was changing the law as it relates to crop insurance. That in order to collect crop insurance, they were making us keep watering crop that was dead. And it needed to be changed. And that was his recommendation. And so we recommended that. And then irrigation has changed with cloud-based sensors, and it's so different from variable rate now that you know.
Drip irrigation. And,
yeah. I mean, so the thing that really concerns me is, are we going to try to be able to keep up with all of this technology and how do you integrate all of this and make it work? How do you make it work? And like I said, I'm too old to worry about it.
Are your children, are they as civic minded and involved?
Yes, they are, and I've got one grandson that I don't know what's going to come of him. He's a junior in high school now. He, last year, whenever they do their testing, he made a perfect score on a state test. And the state came down and accused the faculty of coaching him. Said there's no way he could make a perfect score on it. But he did. But he's just that, I mean, he goes to these, contests they call, anyway, he wins those everywhere all over the state. But he's also a nerd. He's all state in piano. He's all state in flute and all state in oboe.
Wow.
And he just got through coming back from Tulsa to win the all state in oboe.
Wow.
But he loves music and he loves information. And so I don't know what's going to happen. I've got to worry about him. I've got to, really, I've got to sit down with him and we got to talk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was telling him, we were talking one day and I said, you see that dust flying up there? We were driving down the road. Yeah. I said, do you know that dust has moisture in it? Yes. I said, do you know what that's called? He said, Vados. He already knew that.
Takes
Why?
after his
How did
grandfather.
he know that?
Yeah.
Takes after his
I
grandfather.
think this should be a surprise. How many grandchildren do you have?
Good question. I got 23 grandchildren and 24 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
There's your educators then.
Yeah, you are.
Yep.
And I've got to
Spread
work
the
on
word. Yeah. That trickle down effect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your education system is getting bigger and bigger.
Yes. Yes. I've got one grandson that got in that water management program at East Central. He's a freshman down there this year. And I visited with him about it. And he's going to get in that water management program at East Central. And you know what's interesting about that? We started that graduate program in water management 3 years ago. And we had 2 graduate students, 4 last year and 6 this year. But at our symposium, more significant than that, we had 37 undergraduates in water management at our symposium. They're doing a good job down there teaching water. And then
Which university is that?
Huh?
Which university is that?
East Central.
East Central.
The other thing that to me is really significant is this apprenticeship program that the Department of Labor come out with. In the rural water business, the average age of an operator, according to statistics that I get, is something like 62 years old. We don't have any replacement people that are knowledgeable. And so the federal government, through the Department of Labor, started this apprenticeship program. And I'm trying to get East Central to do that. It's kind of in its infancy, but in order to qualify for a certification on the apprenticeship program, they've got to have 200 hours of classroom work and 4,000 hours of OJT. And once they get that certification, the Department of Labor will tell me, if I hire him, you will pay him $25 an hour.
Hmm.
It's under the Department of Labor. Once they get that certification. So I think that's significant.
That's a great program.
I think that's significant. I think it's significant because the federal government is starting to understand the importance of where am I going to get my employees? They've got to meet criteria for DEQ.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to meet,
True. That's a great program. That's so important on so many different professions that there's such a loss of institutional knowledge out there in a very short time to get geared up. That's a great program.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to get East Central to invite them down at our next symposium and tell them about it.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do in your free time? Fun time?
Well, nothing.
Not this. What do you do for fun?
I used to fish.
Okay.
When I was in practice, I used to fish 40 weekends a year.
Really?
And I haven't fished in 5 years.
Did you fish?
But it's not important now.
Did you fish at West Watkins?
Yes.
Did you?
Yes.
Are there good fish there?
Well, that's another story. When we were managing it, the wildlife department worked with me, and the fisheries there was great. But when McLeod took it over, they quit checking creels, they quit charging admission, and people carried the fish out. And so, no, the fishing's not good there now. I'm in the process of working with the wildlife department. You know J.D. Strong.
Oh, yes.
He's now over the wildlife department, and J.D. is helping me. He was over the water board when I was on the water board. Now he's over the wildlife department. J.D. J.D. is working with us, and we're getting the fisheries deal worked back out of it. And Steve is working. Steve is hands-on now. Steve Schultz, and he's good. So it'll get better.
Are they charging admission again, or?
Yes.
They are.
Yeah. They did away with admission. You know, right after we started, opened it up, and Wes called me and said, "Hey, I'm getting a lot of complaints about you charging too much to come in here." And I said, "Time out, Wes. What's too much?" And he said, "Well, what do you charge?" I said, $6 for a carload. And you can fish, you can swim, picnic. I said, "What do they charge you to go to a movie today?" And he said, "Well, more than $6, I think." And I said, "And when they get through, when the movie's over, they got to get up and leave and give that seat to somebody else. If they pay me $6, they come in and stay all day long." He said, "Well, I think you're right. Yeah, just don't change." But he didn't understand. That's explaining. And so they quit charging, and we've got primitive tent area, and we've got 32 of them. I went out there one Labor Day, I think it was, and I counted over 200 tents in that 32 tent areas. They were letting anybody and everybody come in there and camp. What does that do to the sanitation? What does that do to the water quality? I'm in the water business. That's a municipal water supply. Who is overseeing? McLeod didn't care. They were looking at the bottom line. Every time they could get $1 for somebody for tent camping. They did charge tent camping. And so they just let everybody that wanted to tent camp. They threw caution to the wind. They threw caution to the wind.
But it's back under control now.
Huh?
It's back under control.
I think we've got it under control. And Steve is seeing to it. So I'm okay with it. I don't like it, but I'm okay.
Well, I think that this is a project that many times people don't have a clue that the dam's there, let alone how it impacts their daily lives.
Yeah.
But you've made this very visible with the recreation facilities and with the education effort where people know North Deer Creek and the impact it has on the community. You've done a super job making that happen.
Well, like I said, in my heart, it wouldn't have happened without NRCS and Wes Watkins. That's the bottom line. Joe Taron or nobody else could have done this without him.
But it wouldn't have happened without Joe Taron. That's for certain.
Yeah, or if it would have, it would have been a long time, even longer time coming. Yeah.
Huge success, huge impact on the community for generations.
Yeah.
So what do you consider the highlight of this whole process?
What did I set out to do? Get water at my house. And I have a guarantee of water at my house. And when Shawnee signed that agreement to furnish treated water to Bethel PCDA, I think that was the highlight of it.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of other pluses, but that's what I set out to do. And it's done. And when I'm dead and gone, it's done.
Do you have to pay for your water?
Absolutely.
That seems a little bit
There's no way.
In this case, doesn't it?
There's no way I would accept free water. No way. That just, and if I don't pay my water bill on time and there's a penalty, I pay the penalty.
Well, I doubt that ever happens.
I mean, that's the way you run a business.
Right.
And I want no privileges. And I even bought when we were selling boat season permits for boats, I paid a boat permit and I paid a fishing permit. And Janice saw to it that I did. She was a godsend.
Oh.
She was a godsend. And when I think back on it, I thank God for Janice. I thank God for her husband, FD. He was a blessing. And
but you had the best team there between Janice and Rena and Gerald Younger and Don Vanderslive and Chuck Thomas and Joe Freeman.
You know,
I mean,
we hired Janice. We hired her from H&R Block. She was an accountant.
I believe that. I can see that.
And that fits so well through this. She kept the books. She kept the books on West Watkins Reservoir. I don't know of ever there, in our annual audit, I don't know if there ever being a glitch. And that's a lot of money. A lot of payroll to pay.
And I recall she asked a lot of good questions on the NRCS side here to keep everybody in line. That she was a stickler for detail. But.
I went to her defense one time. I want to tell you about it. We had a farm home administration loan and grant, and the USDA in their wisdom, the farm home said, we got too many loans out. We're going to sell some of these off to the public. And so they offered me my loan to let me buy my loan at 25% discount. And so I went to the banks locally and couldn't find anybody that wanted a 40-year loan at 5%. So I couldn't accept that 25% discount. So I notified them I couldn't. So I found out later how this worked, but I remember me asking you about Jack Pritchard. Mm-hmm. He ran the Glencoe Rural Water District. We PCD never missed a payment on our water. We were never delinquent. Dr. Pritchard said that he was 3 years behind. Okay, when the federal government went on the market and sold us, they sold us at 50% discount. And State Street Bank of Boston, Massachusetts bought us at a 50% discount. I always wondered if they'd have let me have it at 50%, could I have done it? Maybe I could, maybe I couldn't, but I would have looked into it. Dr. Pritchard, they didn't take Dr. Pritchard because he was in arrear. My point is that the market got to cherry pick the ones they wanted. And I was aware of this. So I keep going into the office, and Janice tells me that State Street Bank called and said that they were challenging our audit, and they were challenging this, and they were challenging that. And every time I'd go in the office, Janice said, State Street Bank called again. And after about 2 or 3 months of this, I said, Janice, do you have a contact number? So she gave it to me, and I called this guy up. And I said, I'm Dr. Taron. I'm chairman of the Butte County Development Authority. You purchased our note. And I said, I want to tell you, I'm sick and tired of you calling down here harassing my help. Well, but you don't understand. And I said, no, you really don't understand. I've got 7 board members that are none of them paid. And if you don't quit calling down here, we're all going to quit, and you're going to come down here and run this damn thing. Now, is that what you want? Wait a minute. We'll talk about this. Never heard another word out of it.
Active engagement.
Well, that was true. We were running their business. Mm-hmm. And the way that worked, when they amortized us out, they sold us to somebody else, and they amortized us out, and we had 3 different investment companies that bought us before we paid us out. But that's a game with them.
And each one of them made money on it.
Yeah, they all made money on it. And I was down here running that for them and not paying anybody anything. We never even got we did get a free cup of coffee. We made coffee at the office, but no meals, no nothing, ever. So, but we never missed a payment. And I'm going to tell you something else that I bragged about at my last board meeting. 42 years of going to PCDA meetings, I missed 3 meetings.
Serious?
In 42 years.
Wow. And how often would you meet?
Once a month.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Marty, my chairman now, who was a superintendent at the Gordon Cooper Votech, he was going to retire, and I thought, well, I'm going to just ask him to come on my board, because I had a lot of respect for him. And little did I think he would have taken it. So he took it, and I said, Marty, I want to resign as chairman, and I want you to be the chairman, and I'll stick around as long as you say so. But when you're comfortable, I'm going to leave. I can't get him to agree he's comfortable.
So you're still on the board.
But I think that's going to happen pretty soon, too. You know, God's in charge of that.
You're trying to just phase out slowly.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm trying to do.
Do the people in the county appreciate what you've done? Do they have a concept of and appreciate your efforts through the years?
I give him credit. I ask God for guidance every morning, and I give him credit if I do something right. If I do it wrong, that's a weakness.
Sounds like it's been a very good, productive life.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I want you to tell Mike hello when you see him at church.
Absolutely. See him Sunday?
I said our meeting's the 21st of February.
21st.
The next time we meet. He's a good guy.
He is. He's also trying to retire.
I know it. And then he took on the 4-H. He's crazy as I am.
I talked to him Sunday, and he really bragged on you, saying of all the 4-H meetings they had across the state, yours was by far the best attended, and he attributed 100% of that to Joe Taron. He really went out of his way.
I accept that because he agreed to come back. Our original agreement was he'd come down there one time. After we met, he said, I'll be back. So I felt like he was comfortable with what we were trying to do.
Very much so. Very impressed.
Good.
Very impressed.
Well, we've covered a lot. Is there anything else you want to cover, Larry?
That took care of all the questions I had, plus some. I've learned a lot. Worked with you for how many decades here? I've learned a lot of stories here that I had not heard.
Anything else you think we need to add to the record?
I don't think so. I just appreciate you guys, everything you do, and I think this is important, not for my benefit, but for the benefit of the future and the Natural Resource Conservation Service. This is important. So I appreciate you doing it.
Well, then my last question is, how do you want people to remember Dr. Joe?
And as an honest Christian, that's what I want to. I just want people. I don't care if you like me, but I want you to respect me for who I am.
Okay.
And that's important. That is, for whatever reason, that's important to me. So, thank you.
I appreciate you coming today. It's been great.
Thank you.